Hello everyone, so I will be doing my October wrap-up. For the month of October, I read 6 books, so let's get started. The first book I read was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is a mystery thriller novel about this island off of the coast of Ireland where guests gather to celebrate a wedding. I gave this a 4-star rating, so each chapter is from the point of view of a different guest. There is the bride, the best man, the bridesmaid, the wedding planner, and the +1, who is the wife of the bride's best friend. This is the second book I read by Lucy Foley, the first one being The Hunting Party. Both are told in the same way, where not only are you trying to solve the murder, but you're also trying to figure out who was murdered. So it's basically told from like the beginning. They tell you someone died, obviously, and then it goes into the beginning all the way down into like the murder scene, and then you find out who died, and then you find out who killed them. So like you get clues on who it could be throughout the book, but I really like because you get to know each character, and then it's kind of like, oh, I hope that character isn't dead, or you can be like, oh, it's a woman or it's a man, so you cross out someone that you know is still alive. And so I really like that because it does add more suspense, and like suspense because you want to just get through it to know who actually died. And so it's like a very character driven book because you get to know about each character and the story, and you don't get the suspicions of other characters per se because you don't know who died, and so you don't know, well, this one has the motive to kill this person, or this person has the motive to kill that person. The next book I read was The Whisper Man by Alex North. This is a mystery horror type book, and it is about Tom and his son who move into a new house after his wife died. And the son starts a new school, and he learns that one of the students went missing. And this isn't the first time a student has gone missing. 25 years earlier, 5 boys went missing, and they eventually found the killer. He was known as the Whisper Man. They think he has an accomplice, and so they try to figure out who it is because it's very similar to the Whisper Man's MO. And soon Tom's son hears whispers through his window and goes missing. I gave this a 3.5 star rating. There is nothing bad about this book per se, but there isn't anything good about it either. So it's kind of meh about it. There were parts that were eerie. You know, you have the son's imaginary friend who tells him things, and he knows things that he shouldn't know or couldn't even know. And so you're just kind of like, oh, is this imaginary friend real, or like, is this something supernatural? What's going on? And it is eerie once you know that the son is getting whispers through the window and someone trying to lure him out. So that's all eerie. So there are some good eerie points. I liked the father and son dynamic and how it affects their lives, because there's 2 sets of father and sons, and one affects the other. And Tom, at first, he's not a very likable character because he doesn't really connect with his son. He's not really close to him. And he says that as soon as the son is born. But after the wife dies, he tries more. So you see him like be very hard on his son and being like, get over the imaginary friend or this special box that he carries around. But then after a while, he sticks up for his son and he like understands him better. And so I like that character development. But I didn't like the ending. It was very anticlimactic. So that was a little disappointing. The third book I read was Misery by Stephen King. This is about best-selling author Paul Sheldon, who gets into a car accident, and he wakes up in Annie Wilkes' house, and she says that she was lucky that she stumbled upon him and saw it and was able to nurse him back to health because she's a nurse. And Paul soon realizes that there's something off about her and that she's keeping him hostage. I gave this a 4-star rating. This is probably going to be one of my favorite Stephen King novels, along with The Shining and Pet Sematary. This book was a lot gorier than I thought it would be. Like, I knew some scenes that was going to happen, but didn't know everything, and so I was kind of shocked that that happened, and it was very descriptive. So if you're not into gore, I wouldn't read this book. Annie Wilkes is such an interesting character. I wasn't really interested in Paul Sheldon. He was kind of one-dimensional, and we didn't really learn a lot about him. But Annie Wilkes, you discover new things about her, and that's what you wanted because she is such an interesting character, so you just want to know how she became who she is. So even though Annie Wilkes is the bad guy in the book, I really liked her. I mean, not like I want to be her or, that, but I just liked her as a character. The next book I read was The Ruins by Scott Smith. This is a horror book about a group of friends who go to Mexico for a vacation, and they befriend other tourists there, and one of the tourists that they became friends with, their brother, goes missing. So they all decide to go into the jungle to find him, and there they discover these ruins, and the locals kind of hold them up and make them climb up the ruins, and they're not really sure why they're being held hostage there until they realize that the vines are alive. I gave this a 4-star rating. Again, this was much gorier than I thought it was going to be. If you are easily disturbed, do not read this book. The vines can mimic sound and voices, and they kind of move around like snakes, and they end up in people's bodies, and so that's gross. But the worst part is they go crazy basically, and so then they can feel the vines inside of them, and then they try to cut the vines out, and so it's very gory. This is one of the books where you're not going to like any of the characters basically, because it's not really about them, it's more about the ruins and basically if they can survive. And so I wasn't really sad when some characters died because I didn't connect with them. They were just fighting, and there is this one scene that just really annoyed me. I was both reading and listening to the audiobook, so I was listening to this part and it just made me so angry. So one of the guys is basically in charge. Because he's figuring things out. He is trying to, okay, we're going to ration the food, ration the water. We have to pee in buckets because we're going to have to drink that later. And he's basically trying to get them in line because all of them are freaking out. They don't even want to ration the food because they don't believe that they're going to be here longer. And he is trying to tell them that we should do this just in case. And he's away doing one task, and the 2 girls and there's a guy there left, and they basically get drunk, eat lots of the food, and then begin to fight. And so he comes back pissed because one, they ate most of the food, and another thing, they drank alcohol, which is going to dehydrate them. And they turn on him, being like, we don't want to listen to you and all this stuff. And it's just like he's the only one basically trying, and it was just annoying. So none of the characters are really likable. I would, however, have liked to know more about the runes. Why were they built? Were they built before the vines? Did the vines, what went on, and how did the townspeople know about this? There's a lot of unanswered questions that I would have liked answered. The next book I read was House of Evil by John Dean. This is a true crime novel about the torture and murder of Sylvia Likens. This took a lot out of me. Trigger warning for rape and torture. The author does go into a lot of detail about it. I think if you want to learn about Sylvia Likens, maybe Google it, but skip the details of how they killed her and how they tortured her, because it's very heartbreaking. She was only like 16, 15, 16. It's so depressing. Because it wasn't like they had a motive, even though I don't think anything would have justified that, but they were staying with a lady because the mother and father were in like a circus or a fair kind of thing, and this woman offered to take them in. They were going to pay her. She already had like 7 kids, and so there was 2 of them, but the woman only really turned on Sylvia, and it was kind of like they were jealous of her because she was young and pretty, and they got some of her kids to do it, and some of the neighbor kids joined in, and it was just awful. For the book, when they got to the trial part, it was kind of boring in the beginning because it was going into like details of their strategy, and then the strategy that the killer's lawyers tried to pull, and it wasn't very interesting. But then you finally get into the trial, and you know what happens to them. Luckily, they went to jail, but I don't know. I don't think she got enough justice. And I know they did a movie called An American Crime. It's with Ellen Page. That one, I think it's just as gory and kind of disturbing. The last book I read in October was The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. This is about Harriet, who receives a letter in the mail saying that her grandmother has died and she is going to inherit money. But she knows that this can't be true. Like, she knew her mom, and the mom didn't really have family, and so she knows where she comes from. But she owes money to some dangerous people, so she decides to go to see if she can get some money out of it. And there's like a lot of mystery to that family and like her, and is she a part of the family? Like all these, it's like a big mystery, unmasked. And so it isn't really like, oh, someone, like a mystery of like who killed the grandma or anything. I gave this like a 3.5 star rating, and I think this is one of her better novels. I've read, I think, maybe like 2 or 3 of Ruth Ware's books, and they're not bad. There's just something missing to them. It, like, they fall flat, or it's just like it needs a little something more to make them great. But I think this is one of her better ones. There are little predictable moments, but it's not so bad that it ruins like the book because you already know what's happened and you just want to get it over with. It's not one of those, but it is a little predictable. But I really liked the main character, Harriet, and it's just a very interesting book because you can picture it's very gothic sense because it's like a big house. And when I was reading it, I pictured like the house in like Knives Out and that kind of family dynamic. Because they are very distant from each other and so they're not really close. So that's what I was picturing while reading this book, which made it more fun. So those are all the books I read in the month of October. So like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Bye!